The Galactic Council had seen many species rise and fall across the cosmos, but none had puzzled them quite like humanity. When the humans first arrived at the diplomatic station orbiting Kepler 442b, they seemed unremarkable. Bipedal, carbon-based, with primitive projectile weapons and crude nuclear technology. The Council's xenobiologist classified them as a developing aggressor species and assigned them to the lowest diplomatic tier. Commander Zeftar of the Vorthon Empire barely glanced up when the human delegation entered the council chambers. His 4 eyes remained focused on the holographic battle plans floating before him, detailing the siege of the Andromedan colonies. The war had raged for 17 cycles now, with neither the Vorthons nor their enemies, the crystalline Shi'tai collective, gaining decisive advantage. Billions had died. Entire star systems lay in ruins, and the smaller species cowered in their corners of the galaxy. The primitive speaks. Zeftar's translator crackled as the human representative stepped forward. Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Diplomatic Corps stood barely chest-high to the towering Vorton commander, yet she carried herself with quiet confidence. At her belt hung what appeared to be a simple training blade, a wooden-handled knife with a dull, worn edge that the security scanners had dismissed as ceremonial. "Honored Council," Elena began, her voice steady despite the weight of 1,000 hostile gazes. "Humanity requests mediation rights in the Vorthon-Shi'tai conflict." The chamber erupted in what could generously be called laughter, a cacophony of clicks, growls and harmonic resonances from dozens of species. Zeftar's mandibles spread in the Vorthon equivalent of a sneer. "Your species has existed in this galaxy for less than a stellar rotation," he rumbled. "Your weapons cannot breach our shields. Your ships move like sedated gastropods, and your lifespans are mere moments to us. What could you possibly offer?" Elena's hand drifted to the knife at her belt. Perspective. The Shi'tai ambassador, a living crystal formation that pulsed with inner light, chimed its agreement with Zeftar. "The humans possess nothing we require. Their worlds hold no strategic value. Their technology offers no advancement. Their military presents no threat." "You're right," Elena said quietly. "We're weak. We're slow. We're short-lived." She drew the knife, and several security drones immediately targeted her, though they registered no threat from the primitive blade. "But there's something you don't understand about humanity." She held up the knife, letting the chamber's lights play across its weathered surface. "You see a training blade, a piece of antiquated metal, worthless." Elena's voice grew stronger. "This knife belonged to my great-grandfather. He carried it through the trenches of Verdun, where humans killed each other with poison gas and artillery that turned men to mist. My grandfather carried it through the jungles of Vietnam, where we perfected the art of invisible warfare. My father carried it through the siege of New Damascus on Mars, where we learned to fight in vacuum and low gravity." The chamber had grown quiet, the weight of her words beginning to register. Each generation, we told ourselves we were training for something greater. Each war we promised it would be the last. Each death we swore meant something. Elena's knuckles were white around the knife's handle. "We thought we were learning to fight aliens, preparing for some grand cosmic battle." She turned slowly, meeting the gaze of each council member. "We weren't training to fight you. We were training to stop fighting entirely." Zeftar leaned forward, his interest finally piqued. "Explain." "You've been at war for 17 years, Elena continued. "Your casualty reports show 2.3 billion Vorthon dead, 1.8 billion Shi'tai crystalline matrices shattered. Your economies are collapsing, your colonies are in revolt, and your younger generations are fleeing to neutral territories." The Shi'tai ambassador's light dimmed slightly. The accuracy of her intelligence was unsettling. "We know these numbers because we've seen them before," Elena said. "Earth, 1914 to 1918. Earth, 1939 to 1945. Earth, 2157 to 2162. Mars, 2203 to 2208. Europa, 2234 to 2241. She paused. "We fought wars that lasted decades, conflicts that consumed entire continents, battles that boiled oceans and cracked moons." "And you won them?" Zeftar asked, despite himself. "No," Elena replied. "We ended them." She stepped closer to the holographic battle plans, studying the tactical displays with practiced eyes. You're fighting a war of attrition over resource-rich systems. The Vorthons control superior firepower. The Shi'tai have better defensive capabilities. Neither side can achieve decisive victory without destroying what you're fighting for. Her finger traced paths through the three-dimensional display. But look here. Neutral shipping lanes, refugee corridors, trade routes still functioning despite the war. Someone's making profit from this conflict. Someone's ensuring it continues. The revelation hit the chamber like a shockwave. Deep in the shadows of the council gallery, several members of the Merchant Guild began quietly backing toward the exits. The guild has been supplying both sides, Elena continued relentlessly, selling weapons to the Vorthons, selling defensive technologies to the Shi'tai. They've turned your holy war into a business model. Zeftar's four eyes blazed with fury as he turned toward the guild representatives. Is this true? This changes nothing, the guild spokesman protested. Commerce is the foundation of civilization. Someone must... Elena moved with a speed that belied human limitations, crossing the chamber in 3 strides. The training knife, dismissed as harmless by every scanner and security system, sliced cleanly through the guild spokesman's translator unit. In the sudden silence, she spoke directly to the chamber's universal translation matrix. On Earth we have a saying, war is old men talking and young people dying. But there's another saying, the tree of peace is watered with the blood of profiteers. She held up the knife, now gleaming despite its apparent dullness. This blade has been in my family for over 300 years. It's made from recycled metal, weapons turned to tools, swords beaten into plowshares. She sheathed the knife and turned back to Zeftar and the Shi'tai ambassador. The war ends now, not because humanity is strong enough to stop it, but because you're finally ready to stop fighting each other and start fighting the real enemy, those who profit from your mutual destruction. 3 days later, the Vorthon-Shi'tai armistice was signed aboard the human diplomatic vessel Eisenhower. The ceremony was simple. 2 former enemies sharing a meal while the merchants who had prolonged their conflict faced tribunal. Commander Zeftar approached Elena as she prepared to return to Earth. Your blade, he said carefully. It was never really a training knife, was it? Elena smiled, her hand resting on the worn handle. Every weapon is a training knife until you decide what you're really fighting for. My family spent centuries learning how to end wars, not how to win them. As the human ship departed, carrying with it the signed peace accords, the Galactic Council voted unanimously to elevate humanity to the highest diplomatic tier. They had finally learned what the humans had been training for all along. Not conquest, peace.